Alright everyone, it's time for a little bit of a paired video here to something like Bunty King's been talking about this because, you know, he got kicked off Twitter, and Paul Joseph Watson's talked about this. Multiple people, I think Timcast actually is now using the term outrage mob to describe sort of this general phenomenon. I happen to concur. I think it's wise to use that term. Another thing is there's moral panic in general. But what's happening lately, and we see this with the Ingram sort of Parkland stuff. It's like even, who was that other pundit there who was attacking a different shooting survivor who's actually like, he's a conservative, and a couple of his advertisers, like I think Proactive and a couple others dropped him too. And then Ingram's going on like a planned vacation, so-called, which means that she's disappearing for a few weeks for the fury to die down so she can come back and the mob disappears. She should have done that to begin with. I would like to give people some advice. If you are politically cued in, like I am, like many others are, and you talk about politics, if you have anything close to resembling a substantial audience, let's say you get 100 fans, is probably enough at this point, and you say something and you get people that are pretending to be, and it's pretending, to be offended by what you said, never apologize to them. Stick to your guns 100%. Don't apologize. Look, there are people who have made entire careers out of saying off-the-wall, Trump is one of them, off of saying off-the-wall things, and so long as they don't apologize and back down, it's not a problem for them, generally speaking. Eventually, it can just become part of their persona. It could be liberating, I suppose, if someone wants to be brash. The second, though, that you apologize, your natural inclination, if you are a sane, decent-hearted person, your inclination is like, if someone apologizes, you're like, okay, unless it's something really major, then you back off and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad that you're sorry. That's not what happens with an outrage mob. It's the same concept as mass panic causing people to think, to show physical symptoms of disease or something. They work themselves up into a tizzy. What you have to do is let them burn themselves out. The easiest way to do that is deny them the satisfaction. It's sort of like bullying. If a bully comes and is bullying you, the best thing you can do is ignore it and pretend like you don't give a fuck. Or maybe you really don't give a fuck. Like at this point, I know better. Like after years on YouTube, when someone's trying to like harass me or something, I don't even bother responding. Like it doesn't matter. And for years, I haven't really responded because eventually, because you're not feeding them any interest, because you're not showing any signs of giving a fuck, they eventually go away and find somebody else to deal with because they get bored, quite literally. It's the same kind of self-gratification that an outrage mob is looking for. Most of the people right now that are contacting Ingram's advertisers, they don't actually morally care about the situation, number one. They're not affected by the situation, number two. They're not survivors of gun violence. Most of them have never held or even seen a gun, other than it's strapped onto a cop's belt at some point, walking by them in the mall or something. They have no connection whatsoever to the events of Parkland or to the wider debate that should make them care about it at all. They shouldn't care. But they're going to pretend to care because it's literally a way for them psychologically to, number one, alleviate boredom, number two, to project in some cases, and number three, in some cases, they think that they're doing good. Even if they don't have a skin in the game, they really shouldn't care, their proposals are bullshit, they think they're doing well, and so they get very self-righteous and angry. We've seen this a number of times before. It doesn't, by the way, just happen along the political ideologies of the left. The right was famous for this in the 2000s. They were especially on a religious basis. My goodness, we're going to boycott this business for not saying Merry Christmas because it shouldn't be Happy Holidays. We're a Jesus-loving nation. Back in the 1960s, after John Lennon came out and said, oh, well, I don't know who will go first, the Beatles or Jesus, and people thought it was being like blasphemous, and so they started burning Beatles records. They didn't really, most of these people didn't fucking care that if they're snoopy, moralist, self-righteous neighbors, sort of people that had a PTA meeting, get together and say, we're going to burn the Beatles records, everyone else is going to come out and burn them too. They're going to keep up appearances because they don't want to be those people on the street that still like the evil anti-Jesus Jesus-hating Beatles, something like that. 1980s with the Satanic Panic, a lot of the people that were pretending to have been part of some cult or whatever, they never had anything to do with it, but they were bored. They were looking for attention. They were looking for gratification. Some of them were projecting. We saw this a number of times. There was one famous case, I can't remember the name, but there was an Episcopal church. The minister was like abusing kids. They're like, oh, it must be devil worship. No, it was just an Episcopal minister who happened to be a fucking pervert. People couldn't even wrap their heads around it at the time. Just like now, people can't wrap their heads around the fact that occasionally in society you get some fucking lunatic who's going to shoot a bunch of people or blow a building up or something. They can't wrap their heads around it, and so they want to solve the problem because their minds simply can't process how that could happen. So they look for a scapegoat, psychologically speaking. The scapegoat right now is guns. And for some people, violent video games. Before that, it was violent music. Before that, it was Satanists or Wiccans or something. It was communists. It was the Beatles. It was heavy metal. Everything under the sun except to admit the unadmissible truth, which is that there are always going to be a handful of people in society that are just fucked up. There's nothing you can do to stop them from being violent. It's impossible. There will always be the random lunatic, the serial killer. There will always be that one person who goes postal. It's just going to happen. There's nothing you can do. They will always obtain the means to harm other people. Blaming a gun is not going to do anything about that problem. They'll go Timmy McVeigh mode. Or something, or they'll rig their own, they can 3D print a gun at this point. Good luck trying to deal with this situation. You're not going to be able to do it with gun control, or putting warning labels on video games, or cracking down on speech online because Nazis or anything else. It's not going to work. So the best thing you can do with these outrage mobs to defuse them is ignore them. If you have to respond at all, respond how you will. But there are two mistakes that I see people making. The first mistake is that they get drawn into utter negativity and start mocking those people. That makes them easy fodder. When you say, well, when Ted Nugent comes out and says, well, these Parkland kids don't have any souls, he's fallen right into their trap. They're going to morally grandstand on that. You see, he could have responded by simply saying, these kids, while they may mean well or whatever, they don't know what they're talking about. They need to understand the absolutism of the Second Amendment and the fact that we're at a 50-year low in gun crime. You can encapsulate it in 3 or 4 sentences. It's not that difficult. I do it on the regular responding to this sort of person. But Ted Nugent took the bait and he said, well, they don't even have souls. Now, see, my sane counter-argument's not going to get in the news. His will. That's the way that our 24-hour news cycle clickbait sort of corporate media bullshit works these days. Even works online. Yeah, who's going to get more retweets? Hey, here's a sane rebuttal to their proposals. Or, here, off-the-wall comment. Woohoo! Yeah, off-the-wall comment wins every time. At the very least, we should start designing off-the-wall comments that have a kernel of truth to them and don't mock the Parkland students if we want to combat their message of anti-constitutionalism, which is basically what it is. That's the other thing, language usage. People want to call it common sense gun reform. It's not. It's just denigration of the Second Amendment. We've got common sense gun reform already. It's called the Second Amendment. There's a reason why it exists. Number 2, don't apologize. Don't back down. Don't admit to having done anything wrong. You saying, this person I think is a fool, or this person I think is dumb, this person doesn't understand the Constitution. Those are all very true. What? Because the person is 10 days away from being 18, you're not allowed to rebut their arguments? You're not allowed to say what you'd say about any other self-proclaimed, person appointed to lead the virtue of the nation? That's what these people are doing. They're self-appointing themselves to a moral position and trying to push public policies. Flying in the face of the Constitution while doing so, but, let that alone for a moment. They're pushing public policies. That makes them a public spectacle. They're going out of their way to appear in public as often as possible, speak in front of thousands of people, go and talk to NBC or CNN. That makes them perfectly open for criticism. It's not like some random person. If you were to try to make a meme out of, mock, harass, whatever, some random person online who nobody fucking knows about, they got like 10 people know who they are and they say something and you try to blow that up into a national issue, no, you shouldn't be doing that. But if someone is willfully standing there in front of large crowds, haranguing and talking about enough is enough, never again, lol, all this bullshit, which is very high-minded sounding, but at the end of it all, it's not pragmatic and won't work. If somebody's doing that, they deserve to be mocked by anyone who actually understands the Second Amendment. They deserve to be satirized. They deserve to have cartoons made of them, just like any other person who makes similar comments. It doesn't matter what side of some crazy political aisle they're on. Never back down, never admit to having done wrong, and don't get drawn into the mockery game. If you want to mock in a satirical way, that's fine. When you come out like Ted Nugent and say what he said, it doesn't work. You may think he's right for a million years. That's not what the average person in society is saying. Optics matter, and I pointed this out years ago with people. I pointed this out both for arguments made by the left and for the right throughout time for the last 10 fucking years. It matters what the average person in society thinks of what you've said and how you've said it. You've got to understand, if you feel strongly about an issue, you're not an unbiased party in that debate. You're not trying to appeal. When you're debating someone, you're not trying to actually debate the opponent, so-called in many cases, so much as you're trying to appeal to an unbiased party that's simply watching the debate. You're making a pitch to them. You're doing it by debating another person who has maybe a view that's roughly opposite yours. You're never going to convince them. I get together with Nick Fuentes. I'm not going to try to convert him to paganism and occultism. It's never going to happen. He's already, if he wouldn't be debating me unless he was solid in his beliefs anyway. He wouldn't be debating me. I'm solid in my beliefs. He's not trying to convert me. He's making his pitch to people watching the segment. That's what happens during a debate. This is a larger national debate. If people want to combat anti-Second Amendment, anti-liberty bullshit, the way to do that has to be measured and strategic in nature. You've already got the law on your side. You've already got tradition on your side. You've already got pragmatism and statistics on your side. You've got every possible advantage you can have except for one thing. So often you'll get self-righteous and you'll haul off and be like, oh, well, these are actors or whatever. Yeah, that's really, really wonderful idea. Absolutely. No, I think that a lot of people that do that are agent provocateurs being paid by maybe ShareBlue or something, honestly, to tell the truth. I absolutely think so. I don't think that's a conspiracy at all because it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense that they would do something like that. Right-wing groups would do the same thing. I'm sure that they do from time. I'm sure that the cocks, they love to use bots and shitpost for one reason or another. Of course they do. That's why it's like a no-brainer that a bunch of Russians would buy Facebook ads. Yeah, and we buy Facebook ads in their election. It's just what happens in the modern age of, we've got a globalized internet, like it or not, it's going to happen. Just the way that it works. Never back down, though, to anyone on any issue, really. By the way, if you think that you have actually said something that requires an apology, apologize and move on. Their next step will be to try to get you to apologize again. They'll say, well, you didn't say it right, or you didn't say the right thing. They've tried to do this to me and it didn't work because, I know how their game works. They've done it to other people, and I see them, they bend over and they sort of, give obeisance to the person who's morally grandstanding. That's the worst thing you can do. If you have to stammer your way through an apology, don't make it, because you shouldn't be making in the first place. If you have to rack your brain thinking about how you're going to phrase it to cover all your bases or something, no, don't fucking apologize. You shouldn't back down at all. That's about all. Peace out.